It's not easy.
Yeah.
It really isn't. I guess maybe that's where we end this, where it's not turning radical, not falling prey to fascism or
Extremes.
socialism or extremes. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work to plant in the middle of the road and try and find the best course forward.
You're absolutely right.
Because it requires reading, it requires education, it requires sitting down with your friend in the evening on a podcast with whiskey and arguing over... Goodness, how... Welcome to the 42 Podcast, where we discuss life together, looking for answers to life, the universe, and, well, everything else. Here are your hosts, Rob and Lindsey. Welcome to the 42 at night, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about fun stuff. Oh, well, not that fun stuff.
Well, I guess it depends on your perspective.
We're going to talk about history, so, that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get to that. We kind of said this as we were getting ready for it, but because it's evening and we have houses, kids, heat waves, and all kinds of fun stuff, there may be plenty of background noise this time around. We're going to try and edit out what we can, but if you hear pipes running or water heaters or air conditioners, it's just the nature of
Our studio
life.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're hiding in an attic. I am hiding in a basement.
Yeah. Yep. Like bookends.
And we are going to get interrupted, and we're going to celebrate the interruption when it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because it's a good one.
Yes, it is. Yep. Colby did a whiskey run for me.
Yeah, no kid alert. Drink alert, drink alert.
Drink alert. Yay.
Yeah, we do have an episode coming up at some point with two friends of mine who, they do a podcast as well called Just the Two of Us. We're going to be doing an episode with them and talking about alcohol.
Yep. Wine in particular, right?
Well, they're giving us a couple different drink recommendations.
Ooh.
And wine's going to be one of them. They're going to give it to us ahead of time so we can also have the drinks while we're drinking and talking about drinking. And
cool.
Feels like 5 or 6 different levels of inception there. Talking about drinking while drinking and then making drinks? Mixing drinks? I don't know.
That sounds fun. That sounds
Yeah,
cool.
it will be.
I can appreciate wine to a degree, but I don't have the refined palate that like Colby does. I'm not so good at it.
I want to like wine. I really want to like wine, but I have been told it's the sulfates in wine, and if I get a wine that has too many sulfates, it's like a migraine trigger for me.
Okay, right, that's right. You did tell me that, I think, at one point.
So, which is annoying, because it's like, I feel like I should like wine, but I avoid it. There are a few that I'll drink because I know they're safe for me, but I don't know. But that's an episode coming up, and then we had a listener who gave us a recommendation. I'm going to work on getting the listener on. Listener Kyle, if you're out there, we're going to try and get you on pretty soon because we're going to talk about some church stuff, if that sounds good, fun, and exciting.
It does. I think so. So thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that with Kyle and, go through some stuff. But tonight, we are talking about a riveting topic, one that you have chosen, and I have questions for you. Lots of questions.
Cool. I'm scared now.
No, nothing to be scared of. I think this is going to be a broad conversation that I think will help us as we move into September and October with kind of the more narrowed side of this conversation. But what are we talking about, Lindsay?
Well, I wanted to have a discussion about fascism and socialism. And that's kind of where we left it. Like, we don't have super particular parts about that we want to discuss. I did write down a couple notes in case both of us were blanking. I'd have something to say, but
Right, and you and I have both been reading histories of that time period from 1920s to the mid-40s with the end of World War II, at least with the fascism and Nazism. And the book I'm still reading, I'm in volume 2 now, is The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, which is a great history book, chronicling how everything came to be, what it was, and the atrocities of Nazism and the Nuremberg trials, and everything that came out in those documents. And it's a hard read, not just like, the voluminous nature of it, but the nature that's shown in how people fell into supporting Hitler. And
the spell of it.
Yeah, and it's disturbing. I
Yeah.
guess first and foremost, maybe we should start with kind of a disclaimer on this. Neither you or I are like, yay, fascism, yay, socialism.
No, not at all.
This is not a conversation where we're in any way intending to glorify, promote, or be like, yay, these are good things, but it's more kind of just
fascination,
looking at history.
Yeah.
It's the train wreck that you drive by and you just can't look away from. You're like, oh, wow, that's...
Like, how did this happen? How did we get to 6 million Jews and other people dying? And how did we get there? And are we possibly seeing it today? Etc. Those kind of questions. Diagnostic questions.
All right, let me step back. And let me ask you specifically why it is you want to have this discussion.
Okay. I see politics on this scale. And in the middle is the moderate. Middle of the road. Democrat, Republican, independent even, right? On both sides of the pole, you have extremists. And I think what I am interested in is the steps that you get to those levels of extremism. Fascism being on the right and socialism being on the left. Both are not good, I believe. But it's also things that can happen in steps.
But you want to talk about it because you see how the political pendulum swings between these extremes.
Yeah.
And not always out to those extremes, but there's the radical elements on both sides that are espousing their ideals and what they perceive as... I want to say what they perceive as good, but I mean, I struggle in saying that because it's such an extreme that it's bad.
I think they're really... For the most part, I think they're pretty well intentioned. I think they're... Ignorant isn't the right word, but like, you sort of don't allow yourself to see things from other people's point of view, maybe. I don't know why. But then you've got Hitler, who's got some delusions of grandeur going on, and megalomania, and possibly psychopathy. So... I want to say most people probably don't think they're enacting their evil plan. I think everybody thinks they're doing what's best for their people, I don't know. But
no, and
it's steps. You don't all of a sudden wake up way on the right in fascism. I think it's something like you hear something you agree with. Okay. You hear something you relate to. Okay. And I think it's little things at a time, changing your view. And that's what's so scary is where are we in the spectrum as a country? And where are other countries on the spectrum right now? I think that's important to know and get a feel for because as the oft quoted, and I know at this point it's like a cliche, but those who don't look at history, who don't pay attention to history, are doomed to repeat it. And it's like a cliche, and I'm not sure it's even paid attention to anymore. but I believe it's really true. And so I think part of my feeling secure about the future is understanding the past. And so that way I can know, hey, this isn't going to go anyplace good. That's part of my my insecurity, is not understanding the past.
Let me ask what might be a bit of a blunt and concerning question. When you're looking at this and when you're reading about these pieces of history that happen, how much of you is looking as a mother towards the future with concern for your children, towards concern with where things are for us as a country? And I'm not saying that we're headed towards fascism or we're headed towards communism, but with us as a country, of radical elements may sneak in there somehow.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's probably 70% of my concern.
So a good portion is just based on
the future,
the concern for the world your children will have.
Yeah, what kind of world are they going to go into? What kind of baloney are they going to have to deal with? And what about their kids, And so if we can do anything to sort of at least be a roadblock and slow things down or prevent entirely, that would be the most ideal. The worst from happening is kind of what I want to do, or at least be able to equip my kids to think for themselves and to understand why such and such isn't right. Why is this wrong? I want to be able to discuss that in full. And in order to do that, I need to really understand why this is a red flag, or why that's a red flag, or, oh my gosh, why isn't anyone talking about this?
And that's something I've even pondered and considered as a father of, how do I raise my kids up to be prepared for whatever this world is going to be? And I feel like there is a big question mark on that. But then the other side to it that's connected into the work I do, connected into who I am as a father, I think what you and I are doing here, what we're trying to do and build with the 42, is just have conversations. Start there. I mean, that's literally the best starting point any of us has, is to just start with a conversation and try to make sense of the madness that is around us, knowing that there will always be some radical, some extreme.
Yeah.
And, in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it may not go by the name of fascism or socialism. It may go by something else entirely and terrifyingly different. And I think part of the reason that we sit in that fascism and socialism is we grew up with families who were in the Cold War. And we were both born before the fall of West Germany, before the fall of the USSR. And so the influences our parents had was that Cold War. The influences we had was the end of that Cold War. And the influences my kids are going to have is that post 9/11.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
All right, I see gears spinning and smoke coming out of your ears. What you thinking?
Couple things. So something interesting that I've been thinking about is the media and how socialism and fascism both have an extremely tight hold on the media as far as what goes through.
Media by itself it's fascinating because it's one of the most powerful tools that freedom and individuality has, democracy has, and it's one of the most powerful tools that radicalism has in what's put out, how you really educate people to think. And you want them thinking in certain patterns and means, and independence and freedom of thought is something that is dangerous. And we'll have to do this for a book club. George Orwell's 1984.
Oh, I really would love to. I've been thinking I need to read that again.
So I think you and I have had this conversation, and I know I've recently gotten pushback for it But I always recommend that you read Orwell's 1984, immediately followed by Huxley's Brave New World, and then Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451.
What if we do what's that thing called? It's a religious thing, and there's like 3 panels, a triglyph. You know what I'm saying? We should do like a series. So I'm cool. I'm down because I really want to read this stuff right now anyway, but maybe people would get tired of it. I don't know. But we could do the next 3 of these and do that. What is that word? Now I have to open up another tab. A triptych.
Okay.
TRIPTYCH. I think all that to say, these 3 books are like the triptych of socialism, fascism, extremism. That's all I meant to say.
Well, and they're very good books espousing the different forms of kind of control, the ideal control in Huxley of everybody has what they need and they're basically chemically balanced. Orwell, absolute control of people and media. Fahrenheit 451, absolute control of education. I mean,
yeah, any kind of input at all. And in Fahrenheit 451, they had those like movie screens that took up the whole wall. So there's media there too.
Which, we didn't need to do that. We just needed to invent a screen small enough that you could stick in your hand and put to your nose. And
we need to go smaller, not bigger. That's funny.
Yeah, we made it into watches. We're trying to put it in eyeglasses. We're
trying to put it in your brain.
Yeah.
The Neuralink.
Elon Musk is trying to put a microchip.
I just said the Neuralink, yeah.
Which, all right. I will be entirely honest on this one. I love Elon Musk and SpaceX. I love watching them blow stuff up accidentally. And, what they're trying to do. And I think it's great. I think it's fascinating. That man terrifies me, though.
Yeah.
His vision of the future and Neuralink. No, I'm out.
Does the good outweigh the potential really bad?
Well, and I'm sorry, I think we need to hit pause and start asking questions of, should we open this? Should we go down this route?
Yep.
Yes, we can, but should we?
Good question, Pandora.
Wow. From fascism to futurism.
But that's what we're worried about. It's the future.
Well, yeah, it is. Well, and I mean, it's controlling.
Yep.
The media. It's controlling the means of.
Holy smokes! Can you?
The public.
Let's just do a little rundown. What I know about the Neuralink thing is they're implanting this like thread thin electronic device in monkey brain. They installed it in a monkey brain. And the monkey he played Pong with his mind. Like he was looking at the screen and he could control the game and play Pong. And what they're saying they want to do is give paraplegics internet and access to computers in a way that they can't access computers without thumbs. So, very noble, but also now you've got Hollywood in your head and the news in your head and who knows what else listening to you or controlling you possibly. I don't know how that would work, but...
Alright, so I want to return to this, but I think we can kind of loop back around to, the foundational time of the Third Reich and the Weimar Republic and the idea of nationalism. Because it was nationalism that was the wave that Hitler rode onto.
Yeah.
And was able to reinvigorate the people post-World War I as the Weimar Republic collapsed, as inflation went through the roof and the national pride of that country just tanked.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought that spark of what was good. It's not a bad thing to be to have a sense of nationalism, a national pride. But it was whipping that national pride up to the such that you have to build scapegoats. You have to build an enemy. And I mean, they had that pre-existing post-World War I of, we are the victim here, and it's just getting worse. It's just getting worse. And here are our victimizers.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, going back into that futurism conversation and even the paraplegic stuff, it's, you know what? It would probably be good well, not probably, it would be good to help paraplegics. It would be good to help people who have Alzheimer's and dementia and things that a chip in the back of your head could, in theory, be good for. But what about when, your internet service provider starts saying, oh, no, wait a minute, you're using too much of your brain this month and you haven't paid us the full amount, or however you want to phrase that.
Interesting.
Oh my gosh, came out like last year in the pandemic. I binge watched it. It was Amazon Prime.
Oh, about the guy that got
Afterlife?
downloaded? Yeah. Oh, the guy that's dead or something, or kind of dead, and he gets downloaded somewhere.
Upload. It's called Upload. It really was kind of like that classic Monty Python scene. I'm not dead yet. And his girlfriend's like, oh, you're mostly dead. And they upload him. And the whole upload process is they sit you under this chair and, sorry, spoilers, and they fry your head with a laser. Just poof, gone.
Oh.
And part of what that show explored was, what about the people who can't afford to be in the best part of the upload world? The ones who have limited data. I mean...
That's interesting.
Which again, some of these things are good concepts, but there's this business side that I worry about, or even this government side where, well, okay, the government steps in and the government creates virtual housing for people who don't have enough data. Well, is that good? Or are we creating digital slums? And this is all theoretical, but...
That's very interesting. I never thought of that before.
But, I mean, well, that's where the radicalization starts, though. I mean, you have someone who is a bad actor who takes a good idea, or someone who has a good idea and is then exploited by bad actors to create systems of oppression and... I'm missing the word. Oppression and to take advantage of someone.
Exploitation?
Thank you. Exploitation. And that's not even delving into the idea of the soul and can we be uploaded?
Yes.
Should we be uploaded? Have you read Ready Player One?
I watched the movie and then I watched a review and I didn't like the movie, and then I watched a review that trashed it. So I just assumed I wouldn't like the book.
You will love the book and hate the movie.
That happened.
Mm-hmm. You will read the book and be like, why did I ever watch the movie? Because the movie and the book are worlds apart. Worlds. It's like an entirely different thing. So, really good book. We'll have to talk about that one too. Yeah, my boss, my pastor, introduced me to that. Oh, she handed me that book. It was August of 2016, right before I went on vacation to Disney World with family for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I read the first chapter, and then I finished it that night.
Wow!
It was just one of those books where it's like, holy smokes, you just couldn't put it down.
Cool.
So... you will appreciate the book, and it kind of even delves into that upload versus what's the benefit of being in or out. Is there real life in or out?
Cool.
I will say this, best part of the movie for me was when the Iron Giant showed up. Right in that end battle scene, there's the Iron Giant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that was H who was driving that. But no, the book is so much better. You'll love it. You need to read it.
Okay. I wrote it down. So, in your opinion, I mean, okay, what are some socialist countries out there today? There's China.
I have 2 views on socialism. Maybe 3. And you could even possibly make the argument that I am a closet communist. Air quotes here.
Mm-hmm.
So let me start with that and then go into thoughts on countries. Does that sound fair?
Yes. Go ahead.
And please listen, because I actually have, for our listeners, I'm not a commie, but I have thoughts. I think the Book of Acts lays out a beautiful community of people living, working, and sharing life together.
Yeah.
I think that is a portrait of what the kingdom of heaven will be like. I think that is a portrait of what it was supposed to be like post-garden, pre-fall, that it would have been us living together in a grace and a peace that was each of us helping and loving on our neighbors. So, that ideal
Sharing.
is, yeah, and sharing things for the greater good.
And not owning property. Or giving your property up to somebody.
Or property is what's needed in the moment for that people, where it's, oh, okay, we have a new family, let's get a chunk of property set aside that is for them, for their house, for them to be a part of the community and, be supported and support. Because it's in that picture, I think, is the strongest image of the kingdom of God. What it should be like.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where, okay, these are I've heard someone call it the Christian communist goals. Yeah.
Do you think that would work in an industrial society, though? Where there was, instead of farms, factory?
Yes, it does work in modern-day industrial societies.
Prove it.
Okay, you ready? We call them cults.
Industrial, though? Show me an industrial cult. Agrarian, sure. Desert people, but not industrial.
They exist within an industrial era. They're able to get the supplies they need and divorce themselves from the industrial life, but they have together. And there's a whole nother talk on the manipulations of what cults are and what they're doing and what their goals and objectives are, and how, it's instead of it's everyone supporting everyone, it's kind of everyone supporting everyone, but it's going towards one group of people.
And the only reason it doesn't work is because you have to be a Christian. So it excludes people that don't want to be a Christian, which means it can't work in the real world.
But in Acts, it worked that the Christians were the ones who were the core of the group, but they still reached out and helped their community, their neighborhoods. Now, and this is where, again, there's a difference. I believe the corruption of original sin leaks into everything, and so it may work for a time or in a place and be good. And we kind of have these structures today with the churches around us. They just don't have that same reflection as what we see in Acts. Not always. Sometimes they do, or they have different reflections. But that's a whole different conversation. I think the ideals, though, in Acts are where Marx and Lenin and all of them kind of got the original idea, just a little grain of it of, for the good of all.
I will take care
but
of
it
you.
becomes, right, but it becomes twisted. The good of all is let me, and we talked about this last week with even the book club, of the idea of the conservatorship. Would you trust someone to be in charge of all of the major decisions if all of your needs were taken care of? And again, air quotes on that. And I think that's where the break happens.
I don't know. I don't think the Book of Acts was meant to be a model, because you've got no crime, you've got no
I didn't say it was meant to be a model.
Well, then how can you call yourself a closet communist?
I said I think the book of Acts is a portrait or an image of the kingdom of heaven. Just a glimpse of it. Like how Paul says, we see in a mirror but dimly. And I think that's what Acts was it was just seeing dimly the ideals that is the kingdom of heaven post-Jesus. So you've got the 11 guys and the 12th guy they voted back on who have walked with Jesus, and they're building this community around the ideals that Jesus taught. And so it's the best image that we have this side of heaven. And that's the argument I would make. Not that this is the model perfectly, because it always fails. Every time it goes out, it fails somewhere. It does. And I hold that because of original sin, the corruption of all of mankind, and that we as a people live and exist in a fallen state. I think communism is taking just the grain of what that purity is, just the barest little idea of for the good of all, and then twisting it, and it becomes for the good of all, but it's only the people at the top who have the best. And it's a pyramid scheme of government.
Yeah, and it's not, and it's ideological too. Like you can't, there's no freedom at all. There's no freedom of belief or
right.
ideology, or no differentiating opinions or anything like that. Which in Christianity, that's how it is. Jesus said, "I am the way." So if you want to be a Christian, then this is what you have to believe. So in a way, it is very exclusive and controlling.
It is, but the gate is always open. Now, we don't always portray that well as the church, but the gate is to always be open for anyone, any race, any tribe, any tongue, to come to Christ.
Yeah.
Now that's a greater debate, and where I was going with this, though, is that with what was originally laid out as the ideals of communism with Karl Marx, that found roots in the Bolsheviks, in the Russian Revolution, in the foundations of the USSR, I think even that has changed. That it's not even the original communism of 100 years ago. It's a different kind of communism, because the Chinese system is more, I think they call it Maoism,
mm-hmm.
and it's more based on General Mao and what he espoused, and the ideals that he saw and adapted out of communism, then control and manipulate the Chinese people. And that's a form of communism, but it's not the 100 years ago Karl Marx communism. North Korea is, they say they're communist, but that's a full-on dictatorship over there. I think it's Venezuela is another one that has said they're communist.
Yeah.
Might be wrong on that. Or at least they were. Cuba kind of was. They're maybe the last of the old Russian influences in communism. True old Russian, without major adaptation, although what Castro did had its changes. So, what communism was 100 years ago, I wouldn't say there's anyone left. But the systems and base structure are kind of still there, but different.
Yeah, everybody, every dictator or regime takes what they want from it, or capitalizes on the thing they want. So you're right. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Makes sense.
Sorry, I know I'm also sticking on a semantics point here, because to me, I see it as this widely branching system that is intended to be for the good of all, but is designed by the people who are running it to be manipulations of the people for their benefit.
Yeah, this is for your good. This is so everybody can have, sort of.
Yeah, and if we're gonna get into stuff like China, I mean the whole, I don't even know what to call it, but the whole issue over there with the Uyghurs, there it is, the Uyghur people. Have you followed any of that?
No.
The Uyghurs are Islamic people who are being sent to re-education camps, sterilized, killed, re-educated. If you look up China, China, and the Uyghur people, you'll find all kinds of, and they're not like, oh, is that a reliable website? There are UN sources that have been saying there are some human rights violations going on here. There are some deep concerns, but because it's China and because of what China has done to make themselves vital in industry across the world.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to actually pull up a report to send you. We kind of dance around it badly.
Well, I want to talk to you about an article I read this morning, and
yeah, go for it.
I couldn't believe that no other news source was reporting on it.
Yeah.
The title of the article is China's Nuclear Threat Against Japan, Hybrid Warfare and the End of Minimum Deterrence. And this is by the Daily Wire. Just the opening paragraph. A video recently released by Chinese media directly threatens Japan with a nuclear-first strike. The video states, "When we liberate Taiwan, if Japan dares to intervene by force, even if it only deploys one soldier, one plane, and one ship, we will not only return reciprocal fire, but also start a full-scale war against Japan. We will use nuclear bombs first. This is a serious threat against a non-nuclear state coming from a power with a long-declared no-first-use nuclear policy. This clearly signals a departure from a strategy of minimum deterrence." So, this is a huge deal. Japan is, correct me if I'm wrong, one of our allies, which means if they get attacked, we have to be involved.
Well...
And... No?
They are one of our allies, but this is where it gets really complicated. So, World War II, we always kind of focus on the European side of things. Have you ever studied what happened in Japan, China, the Koreas, and the Pacific Islands?
Minimally.
Japan was aggressively invading. They had a good portion of China. I mean, there was a lot of fighting that was happening in China until the Russians helped China, and that's part of the Mao Revolution and why we have the China we do today, is because the Japanese invaded and oppressed the Chinese people. It's the same thing with North Korea. Japan was the big bad guy in the early 1900s over there. And so there's this almost generational distrust of them to some degree. It's changed. Relationships with Korea's, well, South Korea has improved, but North Korea and China kind of still hold this chip on their shoulder for Japan. And so there's a part of me that in hearing that kind of wonders, is this not some of those old roots? And I can be entirely wrong. But Japan was an aggressive nation that, in that time period, I mean, they did some horrible things to the Chinese people.
Right.
Because they were the ones in power. They were the ones who were able to invade, and it's an interesting, not very commonly studied piece of history that helps kind of inform some of the tensions that still exist today. Not rightly, not justly, but they're there.
But there are no stories on that. Except for from this Daily Wire guy. Like, what? This is important. It is important, don't you think? I mean, the possibility of there being nuclear war all of a sudden and us getting pulled into it, that's a big deal. And nobody's reporting. Nobody's talking about it. It's not in the news, except for this Daily Wire bub.
I don't know. Alright, I'm gonna toss one more thing at the wall and get your thought on it. I mean, that may also be some saber rattling from China because of the nature of Japan's relationship with nuclear weapons. They are very no, these are horrible things. We have experience with this. We got nuked twice. These are horrible things that we should not have. So that may be something that China is trying to use as a saber rattle to say, don't do it, or we'll nuke you the third time. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be, but nobody's discussing that.
Yeah, and I'm not feeling... Sorry, for me, I have concerns because I think China is aggressive. I think China is going to be an issue. And I don't like saying that. I'd rather we find a peaceable way to get past all of this. But again, for me, it kind of comes back to the relationship the Chinese have with the Uyghur people right now. It comes back to the concerns that I have with how they're advancing and progressing with their military technology. I think the Chinese people are ingenious. I think they've made some incredible things. I think the Chinese government is incredibly concerning.
Yeah.
And
as is North Korea, for sure. Have you heard of Park Yeon-mi? Her last name's Yeon-mi.
Okay.
Park Yeon-mi. But she escaped North Korea when she was 13, and she's been on talk shows, she's been on podcasts, talking about North Korea and what it was like, and how a lot of the policies we're enacting with CRT and things like that is, she's saying it's very reminiscent of the verbiage that North Korea uses, which I think is something people need to be paying attention to.
And you and I have talked privately about, since it's come up, about having a greater conversation on critical race theory. And I'm still trying to read and understand and digest that. And the biggest thing I think I can walk away with is, and I'm saying this now and I might be wrong, I still haven't read enough, critical race theory is not a bad tool. But I think the people who are trying to be proponents of it are taking what is a good tool for the legal system and for academia to use. Not high school level academia, collegiate and above academia. I think it's a good tool there. I think where we're taking it and trying to apply it into other areas is where it's getting dangerous. Because critical race theory is designed to at an academic level, look at and evaluate the legal system. To look at and evaluate the history that has been, and, okay, well, where are the areas that are being tainted by what has been, but should never have been. So I think it is a valuable tool. I think it's maybe being applied wrongly. It's the best I can say to that right now.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And I do think there are more practical and better ways for reconciliation, because there is a degree of reconciliation that needs to happen. I don't know what that looks like, but I think there is reconciliation that we need as a people, as a country. And I'm not just saying that between races, I'm just saying between each of us. Look at the divides we're dealing with right now between everything going on with the pandemic. We had a campfire cookout this evening, and my son and I were sitting there talking after, sitting around the fire talking before you and I got on the podcast, and we were having a conversation because there was an issue that he was made aware of one person who is very, pro-freedom and anti-mask, and that's not the position Mel and I have taken. We're cautious. We want to make sure we're trying to protect those around us and our family. But we're also, I consider us freedom-minded, where this is for a time, not permanent. And so Ray and I were talking about that, where it's how do you reconcile these two different people where we're safety-minded, they're freedom-minded. Is either ideal wrong? The answer is no, but they're being used, and right back into fascism and communism, they're being used to build and espouse extreme views on each end. Mm-hmm. Safety for all is not a bad idea. Freedom for all is not a bad idea. But when your freedom and my safety clash, who wins? And it's whoever's...
But now you can go get a vaccination. Now it's up to you, bub.
It is, but you have those who are not going to get a vaccination because they don't feel it's safe, or they feel that they have concerns because of whatever reason. And part of that is the freedom of choice to not get a vaccination, to not wear a mask.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, right. If you don't want to get the vaccination, then definitely you wear the mask. Sure, go ahead. But you can't say, but telling... I get what you're saying anyway, but...
It's hard. It is this tightrope to navigate. And sorry, I was laughing because as Ryan and I were finishing that conversation, he looked at me and goes, "Are you going to talk about this in your podcast tonight?" And my comment was, "No, I don't think so. We're talking about Nazis tonight." And he was like, "Oh, okay." Here we are.
Yeah.
But it's that, where you have good ideals that are being, I think it's fair to say, that are quite possibly being manipulated. I don't know by who, on either end. And the best that I can do for my family and those around me is try to navigate this issue with grace and build conversations that are saying, look, I am freedom-minded. If in a year everything with COVID has passed and they're still mandating that we wear masks and everybody must get this newest vaccine for a disease that isn't even a pandemic yet, okay, we're going to have a fight. But, right now, where there is a pandemic concern, the way I phrased it is, I'm trying not to kill Grandma. I don't know. What did I do?
I think it's extremely overblown in the media, and the media is covering the wrong thing. They're covering things like hospitalizations instead of deaths. The 7-day average for deaths in Maine this week was 0. 0 deaths. And so to call it a pandemic is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Honestly, the way I'm looking at this right now is we are in the middle of the turbulence. We went over the falls. We're now in the whirlpool that is going every which way. And at some point, a clear voice or a clear, okay, it's going to be okay, is going to rise up. Or an extreme voice on either end is going to rise up, and it's just going to get worse.
I don't think that the government is going to want to ever want this pandemic to be over. They're going to keep coming up with new... Not that it's fake. It's like, okay, they're okay. There's a Delta variant is a thing. It also blew over in about a month in the Netherlands and the United Kingdom. It blew over. And I think it's going to do the same thing by September 1st. They're projecting that it will be...
I guess my question and argument with the Netherlands and the UK is just kind of how many people are vaccinated, how many people are still following precautions. I mean, that would be my biggest question.
I'm pretty sure they've not taken any extra extreme precautions. I think it just seemed to run its course, but I don't know. So I think they're already talking about, well, we should wear masks because you don't know what other thing might happen. And I don't think they're going to be happy until there is 0 COVID anywhere. And guess what? That's not going to happen. Therefore, this is an emergency that keeps receding as we approach it, which is exactly the kind of emergency that authoritarians like.
But the flip side to this is that in history, and going back to history, it's taken about 3 years for any pandemic, any worldwide pandemic, to run its course. So, if we follow that model, we're at the 1.5-year mark. We may still have hotspots and cases and things we're dealing with. Sorry, I will err on the side of precaution. I will. But do understand, I will also be one of the people who says if the government is going to use this as a means to clamp down on people, truly clamp down, I don't think they are yet. Have we found a point of disagreement?
But more people died from Alzheimer's this year. I mean, not this year, but this month or whatever. You know, it's like, so I think at this point, if you're not vaccinated, you should maybe think about getting vaccinated. But if you don't want to, nobody should make you. But I guess that's just...
No, and I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, we can't live in a state of continued fear. All right, I'll give an example. Not an example, but a decision that we've made as a family where it's, you know what, as a family, we're going to try to exercise precaution right now. But we've also made the decision of, you know what, in our lives, when we get like the sniffles or the cold or the flu and we have to go out, it may not be a bad idea to wear a mask. Like if the kids are sick and Mel and I have to go grocery shopping, you know what, we can toss a mask on. That's just polite. It's not an expectation of what we're going to continue to do with coronavirus, but it's maybe that's a good way to be hygienic around people. Maybe that's a good way to be hygienic with life. But also, we don't expect that masks are going to be something we always do. So,
yeah,
we want to be done with it, but we want to be done with it in a safe way. And we're balancing that, I think. My area of study is theology, not epidemiology. So...
just listen to the experts like Fauci.
I'm trying to listen to multiple experts, not just one singular source. I'm trying to read as many papers and be educated about it as I can. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
It really isn't. I guess maybe that's where we end this, where it's not turning radical, not falling prey to fascism or
extremes.
Socialism or extremes. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work to plant in the middle of the road and try and find the best course forward.
You're right. Yep. You're absolutely right.
Because it requires reading, it requires education, it requires sitting down with your friend in the evening on a podcast with whiskey and arguing over... Goodness, how...
Yeah.
Did you expect we would end in this spot with the podcast?
No, but I didn't really have a good picture of what we would talk about exactly, so
well,
that's good.
I figured with this it would be a 30,000-foot view, and that when we started going into it further in September, it would be talking about specific time frames. That's where my head is with that, and we can talk further and plan that. But this is still good, because it's, you know, what do you do? How do you navigate, and how do you be a human being? And maybe that's the best way to end it. How do you be a human being in the midst of every chaos on each side?
Yeah.
So, Lindsay, how do you be a human being in the midst of the chaos?
Slow down and take the time to pay attention.
I like that.
Listen.
I like that. I try to speak with grace. Give the benefit of the doubt before I say anything.
Yep. And
find understanding first. So, well, I'm on the dredges of my whiskey. How's yours?
Same.
Alright, well, what is it? Salud?
Salud. It's been good.
It's been a good conversation, Lindsay. So, and I get to talk to your husband about video games soon. Yay!
Yep.
I have a sound bite that I have been saving for this conversation from one of our past conversations.
Oh no, what?
I have a sound bite I have been saving.
Yeah, what?
Especially when I have an intention to talk about video game armor. And this soundbite is going to fit perfectly with something you said. And I don't know how I'm going to fit it in exactly, but I have questions.
Cool, good. I'm excited and intrigued. And who knows? I'm probably going to get myself in trouble.
No, you've already said it in the podcast, so it's you just repeating it.
All right.
So, all good. All right, Lindsay. Have a good night.
You too.
And thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you for listening to the 42 podcast. Please take a moment to like and subscribe, and if you want to join in on the conversation, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter to add your voice to the conversation. Thank you.